My heart stopped when David's name lit up my phone screen. My son-in-law rarely called unless he wanted something, and his calls always left me uneasy. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but worry for my daughter Sarah and my grandkids made me swipe to answer. "Hello?" I said, striving to keep my voice even. "Martha," David began, his tone slick with false warmth. "I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." I gripped the phone tighter, dread coiling in my stomach. "What do you need, David?" He chuckled, the sound sharp and calculated. Straight to the point, as always. "Well, since you asked, I need $50,000. By Friday." The amount was staggering, and my breath caught. 50,000. "David, that's non-negotiable," he interrupted, his feigned charm dissolving. "Unless you want to explain to Emma and Lucas why Grandma won't be around anymore." A chill swept through me. "What are you talking about?" "It's simple," he said, his voice suddenly icy. "You give me the money, and everything stays as it is. You keep your Sunday dinners, your little video chats, the whole routine. But if you don't—" He let the threat dangle. "Sarah and I might decide it's time for a fresh start, somewhere far away." I sank into a chair, my legs unable to support me. "You can't do that. Sarah would never agree." "Sarah will do whatever I tell her," he said, the venom in his tone unmistakable. "You know that as well as I do. So what's it going to be, Martha? 50 grand or goodbye forever." The line went dead, leaving me reeling. I stared at the phone, my mind spinning with fear and fury. My name is Martha Collins, and until that moment, I hadn't known it was possible to hate someone so deeply. But the icy rage that coursed through me as I sat in my kitchen, imagining my grandchildren slipping out of my life, it was something I'd never felt before. David had been tightening his grip on Sarah for years, transforming her from a vibrant, independent woman into someone unrecognizable. My brilliant daughter, once bound for medical school, now lived a shadow of a life trapped by his manipulation, and I'd watched, heartbroken, as she made excuses for him, just as I had for her father long ago. But I wasn't that timid woman anymore. I'd spent years rebuilding my life after Robert's death, learning to stand tall and fight for what mattered. David had underestimated me. "I need time to think," I had told him, masking my emotions behind a calm facade. He clicked his tongue. "You have until Friday, and Martha? Don't even think about telling Sarah. We wouldn't want her upset, would we?" The memory of his words fueled my resolve. I wouldn't let him win. I walked into my study, where a wall of family photos told the story of better days. Sarah's radiant smile at her graduation, Emma toddling toward the camera, Lucas blowing out candles at his last birthday. I saw it all so clearly now, the cracks in Sarah's smiles, the way she seemed to shrink in David's presence, just as I once had. I powered on my laptop and began to type, years of silent preparation finally paying off. Every demand David had made, every veiled threat, every suspicious bruise Sarah explained away, all of it poured onto the screen. I'd been documenting for years, not wanting to admit I might one day need it. Now I was grateful I had. As I typed, a text from Sarah came through. "Mom, are you coming to Sunday dinner? The kids miss you." My heart ached at the thought of those sweet faces. "Wouldn't miss it for the world, sweetheart," I replied, forcing a smile. Then, with a deep breath, I picked up the phone again. David thought I'd crumble under his threats. But he'd miscalculated. I would do anything for my grandchildren, but I wouldn't play by his rules. "Hello, Detective Martinez," I said when the line connected. "This is Martha Collins. I think it's time we talked about David." Sunday dinner came with the weight of a storm, a culmination of 3 tense days spent working with Detective Martinez to piece together a case years in the making. Now, as I stood on Sarah's front porch with a casserole in my hands, a familiar knot of dread twisted in my stomach. Entering David's domain always felt like stepping into enemy territory. The door flew open before I could knock. "Grandma." Emma's voice rang out as she flung herself at my legs. At 7, she was the mirror image of Sarah at her age, wild curls, gap-toothed smile, and eyes brimming with joy that hadn't yet been dimmed by life. "There's my girl," I said, bending to kiss her forehead. "Where's Lucas?" "Helping Daddy in the garage," she whispered, her voice losing its usual brightness. Even Emma knew to tread carefully when mentioning David. Sarah appeared behind her, wiping her hands on a dish towel. The bruise barely concealed by her sleeve made my stomach churn, though I kept my face calm. "Mom, you're early," she said, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I thought you might need a hand with dinner," I replied, handing her the casserole. Her fingers trembled as she took it. Before she could respond, David's voice boomed from the garage. "Actually, we need to have a little family meeting first." His imposing figure appeared in the doorway, with 5-year-old Lucas trailing behind, his usual exuberance replaced by a subdued, downcast demeanor. "Emma, Lucas, upstairs," David commanded. The children didn't hesitate, retreating quietly to their room. David led us to the living room, where he took his throne-like armchair. Sarah perched nervously on the edge of the couch, while I sat beside her, close enough to feel her trembling. "So, Martha," David began, his sharp smile cutting through the room, "have you thought about our little conversation?" Sarah's brow furrowed in confusion. "What conversation?" David's tone shifted, dripping with Fox concern. "Oh, did your mother tell you? She's been stirring up some trouble, making some unfortunate accusations. I kindly asked her to make amends with a small contribution to the family." Sarah turned to me, fear flickering in her eyes. "Mom." I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Everything's going to be okay." David's laugh was cold and mocking. "Is that so?" "Because I don't see $50,000 in your hand, Martha, and we had an agreement." "We did," I said, my voice steady as I pulled out my phone. "Just not the one you thought." With a tap, I played the recording. David's own voice filled the room, dripping with malice. "You give me the money, and everything stays the same. Sarah will do whatever I tell her to do." David's face turned ashen. "You recorded me. That's illegal." "Actually," Detective Martinez said, stepping into the doorway with her badge gleaming, "in this state, recording threats is perfectly legal. And we've gathered quite the collection of your handiwork." David leaped to his feet, but 2 officers behind Martinez quickly restrained him. "David Miller," one said, "you're under arrest for extortion, domestic abuse, and financial fraud." "This is absurd," David sputtered, his eyes darting to Sarah. "Are you going to let them do this?" "Tell them." But Sarah's attention wasn't on him. Her eyes were locked on Lucas, who had wandered back downstairs, his small arms bruised in a pattern too familiar to ignore. "How long?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "How long has he been hurting Lucas?" 3 months, Emma's quiet voice came from the stairs. "He said if we told anyone, he'd send us away from Mommy." Something snapped in Sarah then. Years of fear, doubt, and helplessness melted away, replaced by something fierce and resolute. She rose, her voice trembling at first but growing stronger. "Get out of my house. Get out, and never come near my children again." David's protests were drowned out by the officers leading him out in handcuffs. His threats echoed faintly before the door slammed shut behind him. Detective Martinez stayed behind, explaining the restraining order already in motion and the charges piling up against David. "Your mother's recordings were the final piece we needed," she said. "Financial abuse often escalates, and when kids are involved, well, he won't have the chance to harm anyone again." That night, as I helped Sarah pack essentials to bring the kids to my house, I found a dusty photo album tucked away in her closet. Inside were pictures of Sarah before David, her glowing smile at her medical school acceptance, her arms flung wide in celebration, her eyes full of dreams. "I forgot who I used to be," Sarah whispered, tracing the photo with trembling fingers. "You didn't forget," I said, wrapping an arm around her. "You just got lost for a while, but we're going to find you again." The weeks following David's arrest unfolded with the precision of justice long overdue. Detective Martinez had promised, and she delivered. Our evidence was undeniable. Bank records revealed years of financial manipulation, stolen credit cards, forged checks, and secret accounts where David had siphoned funds meant for Emma and Lucas's future. It was a paper trail of betrayal. The most poignant discoveries, however, came from Emma's art therapy sessions. Her drawings spoke volumes her young voice couldn't yet articulate. Dark figures overshadowing stick figures of her and Lucas, jagged teeth and monstrous faces, houses with no doors or windows. Each crayon stroke was a silent witness to the terror they'd endured. Then came the call. "Mrs. Collins," Detective Martinez said one crisp morning, "we uncovered something in David's office you should see." At the station, she laid out a chilling collection of documents, forged loan applications, fraudulent investment forms, and falsified life insurance policies. But the worst was a meticulous plan to flee the country with the children. Fake passports, transportation receipts, even a property deed for a house in Mexico. He was planning to disappear, Martinez explained. Your timing stopped him in his tracks. When I returned home, Sarah was in the study, surrounded by brochures for medical school residencies. She looked up, tears shimmering in her eyes. The hospital called, she said, her voice tinged with disbelief. They're offering me my old spot back. They said they'd heard about everything and wanted to help. I sat beside her, recalling the determined young woman who'd once dreamed of saving lives. What are you thinking? I think it's time, she whispered, a fire reigniting in her gaze. Time to be brave again. The divorce proceedings were swift and resolute. David's ongoing threats from jail only fortified our case. When the judge granted Sarah full custody, terminated David's visitation rights, and ordered significant restitution payments, I watched years of fear crumble from her shoulders. 6 months later, we stood outside Sarah's new apartment, the air brimming with the hope of fresh beginnings. Emma and Lucas darted through the rooms, their laughter bouncing off walls that would never witness fear again. Mom? Sarah called from the kitchen. Look at this. She held up a small box I tucked away after Robert died. Inside was the key to my first business office, the one I'd open when everyone told me I'd fail. You never told me how you did it, Sarah said softly. How you started over. I took her hand, smiling at the strength I knew had always been there. One step at a time, sweetheart, and with the people who love you by your side. That evening, as we gathered around Sarah's new dining table, I marveled at how far we'd come. Sarah flipped through medical textbooks between bites of dinner. Emma proudly displayed her latest drawing, this time of a sunny house filled with smiling faces. Lucas built a tower of blocks, unbothered by sudden noises. David's threat that had started it all echoed in my mind. He tried to weaponize my love for my grandchildren. But he never understood that love doesn't make you weak. It makes you fierce. It gives you the strength to fight for what matters most and to teach your children that they are worth more than fear. My phone buzzed, a text from Detective Martinez. They'd uncovered more victims, families who'd suffered under David's schemes. Would you and Sarah be willing to help build their cases? She asked. I glanced at my daughter, the resilience in her eyes unmistakable. Her answer came without hesitation. Tell them yes, she said firmly. We're ready to help. As night settled over our healing family, I thought about the cycles we'd broken and the courage it took to forge a new path. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't just protecting your children, it's showing them they deserve better and helping others do the same.